Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another fun-filled video for Film Fanatic. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Wednesday, or sorry, it's actually Thursday at about 10 o'clock. Pretty cold day here in mid coast Maine. It originally they had said in the forecast that we might get some snow. It feels like it could happen, so we'll see what happens. Could be first snowfall, at least here in the mid coast. Probably not a lot of snow if we get any, but I know certain areas have gotten some. I know like Dover, Foxcroft got some snow, and further up inland, which I believe is more northern tip of the state, they got a couple inches of snow last week. But it is what it is, and so this show today is about a movie that I've been actually wanting to really talk about for a while, and I feel like it's a really important movie to talk about. So before I get into that, uh, I want to just talk about a little bit of the situation, which I think is good, and also for me, it's a really important issue. I recently uploaded a video, two videos that were not they're not essentially movie reviews, but they're about movies to from the perspective. The first video I uploaded is really about the idea of physical media versus streaming. I also talked about, I always tie in music related things. I talked about, kind of the idea that when it comes to music, especially electronic music, which is my favorite style, that there's, you know, a pretty big prevailing attitude towards electronic music that it's essentially not real music, or that it's not created in an organic way. Talked about that, and then I also talked about, as I had a couple of weeks ago, I'd had a conversation with a couple of friends about these things, and then also another topic I had gotten into, and it was actually a discussion that I had with a friend in the same night about film, and this this guy in particular, was really critical of and not a fan at all of Italian horror films, and it was especially centered on Dario Argento's Suspiria. So it was interesting, both of those topics for me are it is what it is, but they're both for me very very serious issues. They they mean a lot to me, both of those topics. It's like kind of an integral part of my brain. So I got into these like discussions. One was a little bit more almost like a debate, but about those very same things. So I made a video really about that, and it's about the having certain kinds of convictions. A lot of things are not, a lot of things that we experience and that we have opinions on as people. At the end of the day, they're not, they are what they are, and they're not actually, all that serious. They're not really, something that has substantial weight to it, and you kind of leave it as it is. But that being said, I also think there are certain things that you are, we're naturally all very opinionated people, but there are certain things that really, maybe resonate with you personally in every way, shape, or form. And you have like, your courage or your convictions of your strong opinions. So the video is also about like being able to, voice those opinions and stand up for those opinions, and being, to a degree, almost drawing a line in the sand as to what you think, you know, um, through experience and through, to a degree, like dedication, what you feel is the correct view, and the idea of having the capacity to give something props or respect, which is the main argument of the video, or around the issues that I raised, particularly around the music thing and the film aspect, the discussion that I had. And it doesn't really come down to at all whether you like something or you dislike something. It's nothing really to do with that. It's really about just having that respect. And I feel like in our society right now, there there really isn't that. And I think a lot of the times people confuse the idea of whether you like something or you don't like something, versus, say, having, respect and being able to, like, give props to an artist or to a genre that deserves respect. And too often it's a thing, I think, where people think, well, it's just because you don't like it and you need to like this particular style or this genre. And my whole argument was that it has absolutely nothing to do with that. It's about just having that respect. So I posted a video in regards to just those two very specific situations, but the kind of misskewed, you know, misskewed kind of view of those two things and how it gets lost in the shuffle. And it's really not about, getting your feelings hurt at the end of the day because someone doesn't like what you like, because it doesn't. It actually has nothing to do with that. So anyway, I posted a video about that, and then recently I got, which was a pretty serious thing. And at one point I was like, you know what, it's it's stupid, and I shouldn't engage in this whole thing. But then I came away from it with the idea, well, no, I actually think these are this other subject that I got into is actually a very serious thing, and it does carry a lot of weight and a lot of ramifications, and it really opens itself to having that to having that debate. And for me, I take that really seriously also. And the whole situation was basically around a YouTube person I came across, and her name is Kate Black, and she came across her show randomly, her YouTube channel. She is transgender, and she did this review on one of the greatest slasher classics of all time, Sleepaway Camp. And in that film, the killer, in the film is revealed that the the killer, it's the main character that the movie is centered on, is transgender. And this movie came out in the early 80s. And now the transgender issue, looking for equality, and where there's a light put on something, that's a thing now, and that's a topic of discussion. And which I think in a lot of ways is incredibly healthy. But basically, what this woman had said, I thought was pretty serious, the accusation, and also kind of dangerous, because she basically said that the film, although she had said that she likes the film, she also accused it of the film of being transphobic, and which is equivalent to accusing a filmmaker or some kind of artist being, it's equivalent to calling them, well, this person is racist, and they are racially motivated. They are filled with hate and ignorance, and they feel that there's a certain class of people out there that are beneath them, and that they're not human. They don't have rights. So when you throw out those accusations, that's pretty serious. So she had basically accused the film of being transphobic, and that had it. So basically, this film had a built-in prejudice against transgender people, and that the motivation for the story behind the motivation of the killer was essentially that this person became this vicious slasher killer because of her lifestyle, or his lifestyle as a transgender person, which is outlandish and I think scary and insane. And so I responded to her video around that, and that basically saying, I really thought that this, we're all entitled to our opinion, but when you accuse somebody of that, of being incredibly hateful, that's a serious accusation. And I had basically said that this film isn't, political, or isn't really a commentary on sexual issues or race or class or anything. It's, at the end of the day, it's a just a kick-ass slasher film that went on to become, and even to this day, is one of the most influential movies. It didn't have a political or social or any kind of social political agenda. It's pretty outlandish that you're accusing that movie of those kinds of things. So I had put a video, I put a typed a response to her. I commented on the video, and then she also commented back in a way of where I tried to be respectful, and I just said that her opinion around that is kind of unfounded and kind of ridiculous. I tried to keep it respectful, and she responded in a way of where she told me to grow up, and she was kind of personally attacking me, and I don't want to get into that kind of bullshit. So what I ended up doing is I ended up posting a video. I recorded a short video in response to her comment, and I posted it, and I haven't heard back. I haven't heard any or seen any response. So it is what it is. I think it's a very important subject to be talked about, and I'm hoping this woman will respond, and we can keep this debate going, because I think it's highly important. And it's a thing of, where we are right now in our society. These accusations and things are thrown around at the drop of a dime, and they are serious accusations. And if they're proven to be true, or it is something that is true, then that's one thing. But when it's not, it's essentially a really, it can still have a great effect in a real negative way, and tarnish a person's career, and could close the doors for opportunities for those filmmakers, or actors. So it's a serious thing. So those are the two videos that I just recently posted. The second one which I'm talking about now is slightly, when I posted, I didn't really put in a big description. I just basically tagged her and said that this is a response to her video. So somebody coming across the video might not make all that much sense, because there isn't a lot of information on the response, as far as type, as far as text, and just wanted to kind of clarify as to what the context is of that video. So check it out. Check out her comment, and hopefully we can keep this debate going, because I think it's very important. So today's show is a sequel to my favorite movie of all time, and that is The God Father, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. I've talked about this film many, many times. I have done. I did a big show on The Godfather last year. It's my, hands down, all around. It's the movie I've seen the most, and and I got a chance to see it in the theater last year. I don't, which is so weird. I don't own The Godfather on Blu-ray. I'm waiting for a special edition that I really want to get, that I'm really excited about. I just haven't really come across it, but I do have this incredible box set here. This is the Godfather box set. It's basically all three Godfather films, and it has just an incredible amount of special features and behind the scenes, and it's got documentaries. It's pretty incredible. I'm really, really happy with this collection. This is one of my favorite collections. It is DVD, but it's still incredible quality, and the content of this collection is, acts. I feel like if you're a fan of film, it's watching the documentaries and the interviews. It's like taking a master class in film. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So, The Godfather is my favorite film of all time, and I think one of the greatest sequels of all time, if not probably the greatest sequel of all time, is The Godfather Part 2. And that came out in '74, a year or two after the original. And it is a masterpiece in every way. It's, I think, there are examples of films where there are good sequels. I think more often than not, it's the other way around. Very hard to follow. It's very hard to follow up such a classic film that sets a precedent. And a lot of the times, what ends up happening is it becomes a franchise. And The Godfather is, there are three movies, but I look at it as also a franchise. And I think The Godfather Part 2 is just extraordinary. It's a masterpiece. I've even seen in certain circles people almost prefer Godfather Part 2 to the first one. But I think it's the greatest example of, kind of the greatest sequel in history to, for me, the greatest film ever directed. And the story is pretty extraordinary. It stars Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, of course. And the story itself is, the way the film is structured is so complex, and the narrative is so complex that, it's amazing how cohesive the story is. It's amazing how the flow of the film, and it does this amazing thing of where it's set in a very contemporary time, but then it also has all of these sequences of where you're stepping back in time, and it tells the story of Vito Corleone, who is the founder of the family, who is the Godfather, the central character, played by Marlon Brando. Robert De Niro plays Vito Corleone. In this film, he plays Vito Corleone as a young man, as a kid growing up in Italy, and it's essentially on one part. It's like, I look at this movie as it's got two narratives going at the exact same time, and the first narrative is about kind of the origins of how Vito Corleone became, the mafia kingpin that he went on to become, his life in Italy, and his introduction to the world of crime, and you see his rise to power, and it's extraordinary. I think it's one of Robert De Niro's greatest roles. It might be his greatest role ever. During the time in the '70s, I mean, Robert De Niro was regarded as one of the best actors of his generation. I mean, he just recently starred in the latest Martin Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, which I just did a review on and I just saw. And it's one of his best roles, too. I mean, it's extraordinary. He's like 80 years old, and he just has so much piss and fire and vinegar, and just it's just such an extraordinary role. So, to see that he's doing that at 80 years old is just amazing. And during this time when The Godfather Part 2 came out, he was definitely regarded as, he was, in the level of like a Marlon Brando, like one of the greatest actors, or Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest actors, Pacino as well, just the highest caliber actor around amongst some of the greats, the master actors, and he was regarded as like probably the best in his generation when he was younger, and this is an example of it. So the other narrative about this with this film is it's a sequel to Godfather, but it acts as a thing of where it follows Michael Corleone, who is Vito Corleone's son. It follows Michael Corleone, where he has now Vito Corleone has passed, and now he has become the Godfather. He is in charge of the family, and it's about his life and his journey, and some of the horrible choices that he's faced with, and also it really falls into the kind of the showing the ramifications of what he needs to do to try to preserve the family's power and the legacy, and how he also becomes even more of to a degree, a tyrant, within the class of organized crime, and how he clamps down and really shuts down all of his competitors, and the extent that he goes. But so it shows that his extreme rise to power, but then also because of certain decisions that he's had to make, the fallout, the emotional fallout, and he has because of these choices that he's forced to make, especially to his brothers and his family, the fallout and the emotional devastation that he goes through, and the grieving process. And so it's such an extraordinary movie because it has both of these stories going back and forth. And this film, I think, The Godfather has such a does such an extraordinary thing as far as using essentially like flashbacks of 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 events that happened in the past, and then also simultaneously showing where things are at right now. And that's a thing that's used a lot in films where there are for all kinds of genres, and it's a particular style where they show flashbacks to the characters, or they go into the origins of how someone arrived to this particular situation. And a lot of the times that is a really hard thing to do because it's really easy for the narrative to kind of get lost in the mix. It's sometimes really hard in certain films or stories of where you can like keep it really cohesive and it doesn't get too bogged down with too much information. It can lose that balance of where it gets confusing even, or it you might also feel that you're being introduced to so many characters that they don't really resonate with you anymore. So it gets lost in the translation, and it becomes a little bit of a mess. But with Godfather 2, the way Coppola was able to direct and put together this story using that incredibly complex narrative, it's extraordinary, and it's the best use of that kind of narrative that I've ever seen in a film. And considering how daunting I imagine it to be for Coppola to not only follow up such a masterpiece of a film being The Godfather, but then trying to really spend time or equal time showing the these two centralized characters, the father son, and it's about the father son dynamic, and to tackle both of those narratives and to make it so seamless, it's just extraordinary. I definitely think it. When it comes to the use of that narrative, for me, it's like the greatest example ever. Just amazing, just incredible. One of the criticisms of The Godfather too is that people, and I still hear it, people think it's a little bit too slow. And there's the famous, all of the famous stories of Coppola of where he fought with Paramount Pictures the entire way, and he thought he was going to be, fired at any given moment. So he made that film under just incredible, amounts of stress, and he was against the odds all the time. and yet he was able to persevere and create this masterpiece. One of the things that he talks about a lot was that on the first with the first cut of The Godfather was that the executives thought the film was a little bit too slow, and that the film needed to be more violent, and that the film needed to be more bloody to be able to sell tickets. And he was insistent that no, this is like the violence in the film is there, but it's there for a purpose. And when you arrive at these scenes, it has meaning, it has impact, and he stayed true to that. But that's often been a criticism, and I've heard people say outside that I still even hear it now that they feel, although they think The Godfather is an important movie, they think it's a little bit too slow and this and that. And for me, I don't. I think it's just one of the greatest stories ever told, and whenever the violence does happen, it has an impact, and it's so jarring, and it's so intense, and it's so it just has such a deep impact. I do think that to a degree, The Godfather Part Two is a darker film. It's a really dark movie, and I think it is to a degree a more violent film. But I feel like as Coppola had to explore those darker aspects, especially with the kind of the morality. I feel like The Godfather 2 is also, to a degree, like a morality tale. It is, and also, it's a morality tale. I think it's also a cautionary tale around the idea of, what a person will do to preserve a legacy, or, as far as achieving massive amounts of power, and that what the fallout can be because of that, because of the steps that you are taking to achieve this power. So it has a very dark, underbelly throughout the entire film, because you see the weight of Michael Corleone's actions. You see it weigh on him, even though he is so focused on achieving this new level of power and preserving the family legacy, the family business, and basically anything that stands in his way will be destroyed. Is anything that's trying to stop him, but it shows both aspects, which I think is amazing, and so the film does have a little bit of a darker tone, but just amazing. The other thing that's so on a lighter note, but which I has always been a thing for me around, especially Godfather, but especially Godfather, the first one, but also this film, is every time I watch The Godfather, it always I always think of obviously family, and also the holidays. This film is a movie that, as a family, we used to always watch around Thanksgiving. We'd watch around Christmas time, but it was always a movie that we would always watch as a family around Thanksgiving. It was always, you know, always on cable, always on TV. Both movies have always been on, running continuously in syndication, and it was always a thing of us watching this film around the holidays, especially around Thanksgiving. So it always, every time I watch this film, it puts me in that state of mind, and it has a real nostalgic thing for me. And again, both of these films, I can. It's one of those things. I have seen both of these films, especially The Godfather, but also Godfather 2. I'll eventually do a show on Godfather 3, which I think is good, but it's not as good. Obviously, it's not as good as the first two, I think, in a lot of ways. But there is a newer edition that came out, which I haven't seen. I do want to see it. But I'll eventually do a show on the third one. But I think the first two are just masterpieces. And I those movies are so strong for me that I can, for example, like, which has happened so many times, like I'll be over my folks or whatever, and they'll put on TMC, or Turner Network Classics or some kind of classic movie channel, and The Godfather will be on, or Godfather Part Two, and it could be, on, maybe, I'll watch it and it's maybe an hour into the film or 10 minutes into the film, or it just started. It's one of those. These films are so powerful to me that whatever whatever part of the film I'm first seeing, I stop what I'm doing and I end up having to watch the entire thing. I can't look away. I can't have it as background. I'm automatically, wherever I'm picking up from watching it, I I'm automatically engaged, and I basically stop what I'm doing, and then I focus on watching the movie. That's just how I am with these films, especially with Godfather. And it just, to me, it has that magical spark that no matter where or when or what part I'm seeing for the first few minutes, I'm hooked, and I have to watch the entire film. It's one of those movies. It's one of those films that just has that magic. And it's just the writing, the direction, the tone, the music, everything, and it's such a great drama. And I love the dark aspects of the film, especially around the violence, the the whole idea of organized crime, the crime syndicate mentality, uh, the the sense of loyalty, as far as what family means, all of those things. They're just such powerful films, and they're just so entertaining. And so most people out there have probably seen Godfather 2, but I'm I'm amazed. Also, I come across lots of people who have never seen either of these films, and I kind of flabbergasted and shocked because they're such, well, for me, the greatest, it's the greatest film ever made, The Godfather. So they're such important movies, and I think these movies truly are, like, if you're a fan of film and you, like, say, you collect movies, but movies are not just entertainment for you, but you really legitimately are moved by films. The Godfather is essential, and Godfather 2. They are, I think, essential movies that they're required for people. They should be required for people to see. You might not like them. You might, like you said, you might think they're a little bit too slow or dated, whatever, and that's fine. You can have any opinion on it. But again, it goes back to my original thing where I was talking about the other video. I think everybody needs to see these films if you're a fan of a deep fan of films, or where your fans are movies are just not entertainment. They're essential. And you got to have respect for them because they're just iconic. So just really needed to do a show on Godfather 2 to follow up the my coverage, my video of The Godfather, which I did last year. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.